But President Obama will make his case for military strikes to the American people next week with a televised address as the Congress debates whether to support him, with American public opinion proving as divided as that in Britain. Later in the programme, we'll report from California. But let's cross now to Seattle, where we're joined by the retired four-star US General Barry McCaffrey. General, does the President's idea for a military strike make sense to you, that you can have a limited but punitive strike that doesn't change the regime?
Well, rarely have I seen more muddled political thinking going on. This has really been amateur hour in the National Security Council. Their dilemma is intense. Obviously, they've made a moral and humanitarian argument that's very powerful. Thousands murdered or sickened by prohibited weapons. They've also, I think, made a pretty sound argument that it came from the Syrian government. Now, having said that, we have telegraphed that Assad, you personally are not at risk. We're not going to try and change the trajectory of the war, and we fear that many of the militant rebels will end up in a bloodbath if we bring down Assad. It's a no-win situation. I'm mildly encouraged that he's gone to Congress, because otherwise he was proceeding without UN authorization, NATO, or the Arab League. So he was really out on a limb.
So what would you advise? I mean, is this an all-or-nothing situation? You have to go in big and hard and take everything out, or don't do it?
Well, I think he's stuck. I think he's going to try and get a legitimacy out of Congress. The history of it is he'll get it, although this one is right on the edge. The House is very troubled by this, as well as the Senate. I think he'll get his authorization. He'll go ahead with a strike. It'll be more robust than initially talked about, and it may well trigger a reversal in the momentum. The Syrian government essentially is winning. But I find it impossible to believe that Assad and his Alawite minority will negotiate. They think their survival's at stake. There'll be by the way, there'll be a response from Hezbollah militias out of Lebanon, and as well as the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So this thing will provoke potentially further escalation in the struggle.
So given all that hindsight everybody had after Iraq about the need to plan what happens after the war and think about the fallout and think about who else will be drawn out, have they done that in America?
Well, I think they're obviously thinking about it. But, you know, look, the bottom line is the Egyptians have directly denounced military operations. So have the Jordanians. There's zero indication that the Saudis will directly participate. When the Brits didn't support the strike, that was a huge blow, not just to the military effectiveness of it, but to the political viability of it. I think we're in trouble, and I can't imagine that a modest symbolic strike will do anything good. And a heavy strike might well bring down the Assad regime. We put the U.S. Navy and Air Force after the Assad regime. In 60 days, they're gone. And then we have to be prepared to live with the aftermath of Richard Engel out of NBC News is reporting as many as 60% of these rebel groups now are extremist organizations. So it's a very difficult, troubling situation.
Do you think the world has changed to the extent that the US president can't get what he wants now? He can't rely on the United Kingdom to be shoulder to shoulder. Things have changed.
Well, I think without the Brits, U.S. operations are always, the Brits are the only ones that have the sophistication and training and the technology to fight with us, but more importantly, they bring legitimacy to it. When they cut out of that operation, I thought it was a huge blow. Now, the credibility of the strike, though, I've added this a couple of times, is based on 2.3 million men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces, the world's most gigantic economy, and our value system. So our credibility is not yet at stake. It's a question of the sensibility of the policy option we're considering. It doesn't look like it's going to achieve any good political purpose.
General McCaffrey, thanks very much for joining us.